You are listening to the Traditional Outdoors Podcast.
Welcome and thank you for listening to the Traditional Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Angel. I'm joined today by my co-host, Nick Viau, and this is episode number 1. What's with the name Traditional Outdoors? And it's probably not going to be what you'd expect. So on the other end, I've got Nick. Hello, Nick.
Hey, Steve. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Been a bit of a challenging week, but hey, we're here. We've been kind of kicking this around for some time. I'm really excited about getting it started.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, haven't we? Kicking around the idea.
Probably the better part of at least 6 months, maybe a little bit longer.
So I was talking about it a lot longer, but you were talking about it for about 6 months. Well, yeah, we're finally here, man. We're ready to rock, ready to do this, and I'm excited. I get to talk to you, and we get to do a podcast about stuff that we enjoy and love, the outdoors and traditional archery and fishing and other stuff.
Absolutely. So I guess for, to kind of kick things off, let's tell everybody a little bit more about who Nick Viau is.
Who Nick Viau is? Well, I'm not going to give you any kind of fancy Hemingway response here or anything, but I started, I grew up in northern Michigan, Sheboygan, and from an outdoors family. My dad was a hunter, my uncles were hunters, my grandpa was a big hunter, all fishermen, and I never really got into it. Dad was taking us fishing, and I liked that, and I always liked it. We lived in the woods, and I loved to be out in the woods with my brothers and stuff, but never really caught on to the whole hunting thing. Dad would take us squirrel hunting, and my uncles tried to take me deer hunting, but I really wasn't into it. I just, at the time, it was more hunting to me. Deer hunting was more of the farm variety with baiting and, guns or compound bows or whatever. And that was all right, but it wasn't really something that I really wanted to do. And I was involved with sports. And since, my brothers and I have 2 little brothers, since they were involved with sports too, we were always running. We never had time. My dad kind of gave up hunting and fishing for quite a while because, salmon fishing and stuff, because we always had a tournament in hockey or wrestling or, something of that regard. So, yeah, it just never really stuck with me. And then when I was later in life, after I went away to school and got married and whatnot, I started feeling like I missed the outdoors. And I'm living in Grand Rapids now, and I was living in the city right downtown and didn't really go outside ever in the woods or anything like that. That just wasn't a part of my life. And being a northern Michigan kid that grew up in the woods, that was really tough for me. And I felt like I was missing something. And I had just ended a hobby, and I wanted to get into another hobby. And I wanted something that helped me with my stress. So I picked up one day I like comic books, and I was reading a Green Arrow comic book, and Howard Hill was in it. And I learned about Howard Hill. I started investigating, and of course, Howard Hill shot longbows and hunted with longbows, and he did all the trick shooting in Errol Flynn's Robin Hood, and I learned all of that. And so I went out and I got a bow, and after I got a bow, I started wanting to find things to do with it. It wasn't enough just to target shoot, and where I was shooting was a range, and there was all these bow hunters would come into this range, and there was a traditionalist there named Bill Cooper, and I started shooting with him, and he'd always talk about hunting. And from there, I met a lot of people, including our mutual friend Tom Jorgensen, and started learning that people hunted with longbows and recurves and all kinds of stuff, and I really wanted to do that. And I went out, and my wife thought I was crazy because I'd never hunted. And I got a license. It took a lot just for me to buy that license. I actually bought my small game license so I could go stumping. And then after I got stumping and in the woods with my bow, I started to feel comfortable. I started feeling like I was a kid again out in the woods. And then I got that deer license. And once I did that, I started hunting and I never stopped. And I got a deer. I was fortunate to get a deer that year, which, is pretty unheard of. I think it was dumb luck, to be honest with you, but I got a deer that first year, and I've been hooked ever since, man. And I know that's running through it, but that's kind of my story. So I've been shooting and bow hunting since I was 27, since 2009, and I haven't really missed a season since, and I absolutely love it. And that's where we are. I've been writing about it for a long time, and I've got a blog called Life in Longbows. That's lifeinlongbows.com. And I'm currently writing a book, but we'll talk about that later. And it's of the same name, Life in Longbows, and that'll be coming out this summer. And then I got to meet really interesting people like you, Steve. And and made a lot of friends, and that's where I'm at, man. That's it.
So it's funny you mentioned that, and I'll come back to that in a minute about us kind of, I guess, meeting online, which was kind of interesting. So, but you said you'd been hunting since 2009. So I guess this is going to be your ninth season.
Yeah, I'm getting near a decade, which feels pretty wild. That's for sure.
So I was going back today when I was thinking about, we were going to try to do this tonight, and I was going back and kind of looking at some history online and so forth. And we actually first started kind of exchanging messages on Twitter in May of 2012. So it's been a lot. There's been a lot that's happened in those few years. I guess that's what almost 6 years now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And you actually helped me with my blog quite a bit, especially moving over. I was originally hosting everything on I kind of bought into a server with some people, and I wanted off that server and I wanted on my own. And you kind of helped me migrate that, and that's how. That's one of the reasons we started talking as much as we did. But yeah, it's funny we met on Twitter. I hardly ever use Twitter anymore.
Same here. Everything I do on Twitter is pretty much set up that it's automatic from other things that I do online. It just kind of shares it to Twitter at the same time. But I do remember you asking for some assistance with moving your blog, and at about the same time was when I was actually asking you questions, because I was thinking about starting my own blog at the time, which ultimately became Simply Traditional. And I think I started that right about the same time, somewhere between May and June of 2012.
Wow, I forgot that I started mine first before you, and I'm glad you didn't take my advice and called it Angel's Angle. I'm really happy you went with Simply Traditional.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that too.
But yeah, that was great. And the funny thing is, I didn't even know you were from the South, and I should have figured that out when your email was Bowhunter.GA or your Twitter handle.
Well, and at that time we weren't talking on the phone, so my Australian accent didn't throw you off. So
yeah, and that's what's funny about this whole deal. Like, I met quite a few people on Twitter, and started talking to them, and it's always weird when you first meet somebody from online. Like, it's just a strange deal. Like, I'll never forget the first time that we actually drove down there and visited you, Tom and I. That was different. Like, just the expectation and just, wondering like, oh, I don't want to do anything, hoping I didn't do anything embarrassing and all that other stuff. And yeah, that's the online life and connecting connecting outdoors people is just fascinating. It's just a real cool deal. But, I know your background's quite a bit different than mine. So why don't you talk about your background a little bit and how you got into all this?
It's kind of funny, Nick, listening to, and I don't guess I had actually thought about it this way until just now, kind of listening to you map out to, how you got started, because my story is almost completely different. Now, obviously for the people that don't know either one of us, there's a pretty good age gap between us. So I've been in the woods and the streams a good bit longer. But what's funny is I grew up in a household that really didn't do much at all in the outdoors from a sporting perspective. My father was and still is a tobacco farmer in North Carolina, so I was outdoors all the time, but it wasn't exactly having a lot of fun. And I can remember my father would he probably took us fishing a handful of times, and it was the Zebco 202 push button reel with a bobber and a cricket. It was whatever little stream or something you could find. And I think he used to bird hunt a little bit, but I don't have very many memories of my father hunting at all. So I really don't know where my drive for the outdoors came from, but I know it was there as far back as I can remember. I've done everything from fishing in small creeks with a sapling and sewing thread and making my own hooks out of straight pins, just anything to get out there and try to catch a fish, and then from a hunting perspective, I can remember chasing chipmunks and rats and squirrels with a bent sapling with a piece of string tied to it. So the drive was always there for me, but I didn't really have anyone around me that appreciated the outdoors like I did. And there's all kinds of stories that I could go into there, but my father did recognize that I had that desire, basically because I kept it in his face all the time. And on my 16th birthday, he actually gave me my first bow. It was a compound. It was a Darton SL50, and I remember I was shooting the Eastern Orange 2117 arrows out of it, and the first broadheads that I hunted with was Razorback 5s. I don't know if you've ever even seen those or not, but I
don't think so.
But I started
very familiar with the Easton rattle cans, though. I started out with aluminum arrows too. In fact, my first deer was a 2117 with a Ace standard. So yeah, I actually shot aluminums for quite a while.
I still shoot aluminums from time to time. So. But I hunted with compound for 20 years, and in the mix of that, I hunted with rifles. I've hunted with muzzleloaders, shotguns, you name it. I mean, there's very little that at some point in time that I haven't done as far as from a hunting perspective. But as I got older, I tried to further challenge myself. Rifles turned into handguns, and ultimately the handguns just faded away, and I started hunting solely with my compound. And I guess this was my 16th season that since I switched over to traditional, and pretty much been hunting with traditional ever since. Once I shot my first deer with a longbow, I was hooked. There was just no going back.
So you've been hunting traditional for 16 years?
This coming year, this will be my 16th year that we're coming into. The season we just wrapped up was my 15th hunting.
Wow, I did not know that, man. Like, I knew you bow hunted a really long time. I figured you were around the 10-year mark with traditional. That's wow. You've been at it a lot longer than I thought you had been. Solid 6 years there. And that's what's kind of interesting, that you were just saying the dynamic between the two of us, not just in age, but the fact that I came into this, I already did all. I mean, I already put the challenges on myself right away. Like I got into this. I knew I wanted when I found out that there was a way to hunt where you gave the deer and get any game every advantage. I was hooked on that. Coming from, baiting and things like that, and watching people just kind of shoot deer off the farm for their food, which whatever, it's hunting season, but. When I found out that you could do this, that was all my interest, and I don't know anything else. Like I had to learn how to hunt. I just knew that I loved the bow, and I wanted to be in the woods with the bow, and everything else I had to learn. My dad taught me quite a bit when we got back into it, and he was kind of tickled that I showed an interest, even as late as I did, and I got him back into the woods too. But you're from a completely different perspective, where you were like an outdoorsman first and then gravitated to the traditional bow. So that's two really cool perspectives that are complete opposites.
Absolutely. And I would say in that situation, I'm probably more the norm. I would say there's probably very few individuals out there that, just picked up a traditional bow, a longbow or a recurve in their 20s and started hunting with it. The industry and everything, just our way of life is, what's the newest and the latest and greatest, and people tend to gravitate towards that. So I think you're just a very unique individual from the perspective that, you kind of went back to the roots to start with, instead of having to go the full circle and go through the cycles where you got to the point where you wanted to make it more of a challenge. You just you grabbed the challenge by the horns and jumped out there right off the bat.
Well, there's another reason why I did that, though. I don't even think I've ever told you this, but I got big into in college. I got big into paintball, and I was playing speedball. Or X-ball, which is basically where there's bunker fields. It's not like army style paintball where you're playing out in the woods and you're stalking each other and stuff like that. This is like a more of a sport where there's a flag in the middle and you've got a team of 5 and you're trying to get the flag to the other side, and it's all coordinated, planned things and a lot of athleticism and things of that nature. And also the markers you're using are super high tech. And for like 4 years, I was just keeping up with the Joneses. Like, every year buying a new paintball gun and trading it for a better paintball gun and that being obsolete, and then having to get another paintball gun and then loaders and all this other stuff. And when I was done with that was the hobby I stopped doing when I got out of college. Just couldn't afford it anymore. And I remember my wife asking me, like, you're interested in archery now? Like, what? So do you want like a compound? And my dad said the same thing. I said, no, I don't want a compound. I am not dealing with all that technology again. Like, I've had that enough. There's technology all over my life. I don't want any technology in this. This is going to be pure as I can make it, and simple. And because technology for me equaled stress. Like, that was the part of the game I didn't like, having to always get something new and spend money on it and things like that. And the traditional bow was so different. It was so different. And I'm like, this is it. This is for me. And that's a big reason for why I did what I did. And the other part of my perspective is I don't gun hunt either. Not even during rifle season. Some people think I'm crazy, and I go seasons, like I'm on like the 2-year plan, the 2-year plan for deer. I laugh about that all the time because that's usually what ends up happening. I hunt a lot on public land, and I don't have any land of my own, and I hunt a lot from the ground. I'm mainly from the ground, so I get skunked a lot, and I've missed a lot of deer. And I mean, if I was doing this to eat, I'd starve. I mean, I would be hunting with a gun, and I would be getting my 1 or 2 a year for the freezer if I was doing this for food. But I'm one of the only people in my family that eat red meat. My 2 daughters and my wife Jessica, 2 of them don't eat red meat. So it's mainly for me to enjoy. So I'm an experienced hunter. Like that's what I am. I'm hunting for an experience. I'm not exactly hunting for an animal. So I can go a season without getting food. Some people, that's not an option. They're going to get their deer one way or the other. The tool is secondary. But a bit of a tangent, but I did want to point that out.
Well, it's actually, I think it's kind of a good tangent, because one thing that I heard you say there was that you're really out there for the experience, and that's that kind of leads into why traditional outdoors, and why the podcast. And if you don't mind, I think maybe we'll just kind of jump in there and start getting into what the podcast is going to be about and why we decided to go that route. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as we said earlier, we've been kind of kicking this idea around for a while, and I wanted to do it, and obviously there's always the time factor. I seem to always have more going on than I can manage to complete in a day/week/month. But at the same time, I felt like I needed something that was going to mean something to me, something I could get behind, and something that I would enjoy doing at the same time. And over the last, I don't know, I guess it really started back during hunting season, as a means of promoting my website. And again, the Simply Traditional website. I'm a member of a lot of various communities online, social media, and so forth. And it's not just limited to the traditional archery community. I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. And one thing I've noticed, really over the years, but it really just started to sink in recently, is that, regardless of what sector or subset or little facet of the hunting community you choose to identify with and participate with, there just seems to be a recurring theme that a lot of people have, some idea that if you don't conform in some way to some set of standards, that you somehow don't belong. And I'm a traditional guy. I've been a traditional guy for a long time, and for that reason, I'm gonna kind of pick on myself and pick on us, because I know you're a traditional hunter too, and use the traditional community as an example. And really, before I get into that, the traditional community is it's a tight knit community. You know that we participate in the Michigan Longbow Association, and you just won't find a better group of people. I mean, they're absolutely wonderful people. But if you spend any real amount of time, especially on social media, it's easy to see that the community itself is often seen as, my way or the highway type of community. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, to say the least.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen, people get into a discussion or ask a legitimate question on social media, and they're met with, the keyboard warrior for the most part, the expert of the month. And a lot of times they'll make the person feel inferior, or they'll say something that makes them, feel like they don't belong. And I can't tell you how many people, I don't know that they actually walked away from traditional archery or walked away from traditional bow hunting, or maybe bow hunting altogether. But if you see their responses sometimes, if you were standing there with them, you have to envision in your mind that they got frustrated and walked away.
Well, it's, I mean, one of the things, society bleeds into everything, right? And we're in a certain period of time right now where it's easier to be separate than it is to be together. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is last few years in particular, is that, you definitely, this is no secret, but you act a lot different online than you do in person. If you're looking somebody in the eye, and you see what's good about that person and that they're a person, and you treat them a lot better. And I don't know how many times, from my perspective and in my life, where, I've treated somebody poorly online in a group or something like that. And if I'd have seen that person in real life and had a conversation face to face, and they told me they shot a compound and only dabbled with a traditional bow or whatever, I'd have been like, cool, hey, that's awesome. Have you done this? Have you done that? I mean, there's no tone in online communication, but so naturally everybody takes everything as being really, really negative, as they're getting yelled at, or they're being jerks. And with traditional, there's an inherent, we're kind of already, when it comes to recruiting, we're kind of already at a disadvantage with people who are already sportsmen, just because we have already separated ourselves into an elitist faction by saying that we are going to do things a hard way, a challenging way, on purpose. And that comes off as being, I think, holier than thou at times, a little bit pious, a little bit I'm better than you. And you kind of just you gotta understand that that's how other people are already thinking. So that's the way they're going to take you. And since there's a group for everybody these days, it's real easy for somebody just to say, well, I'm not going to join your group. I'm going to go join another group. I wasn't treated very well here. And, that's not something that, it's not always like our fault. Sometimes people come in guns blazing and they have an agenda, or they want to troll or whatever. And that's a different situation. But I do think that we need to be mindful that people come into this from all different walks of life and all different backgrounds, and we have to respect that. And we have to answer the easy questions that we think are stupid. And we have to, reach out and extend the olive branch and get people to do this, because everybody started somewhere. There's not that many people that jumped in like me and just said, I'm going to shoot a bow and I'm going to start hunting. People are coming from somewhere. And that's just something we need to be more mindful of, I think, especially with social media, and also understand that tone is usually going to be taken the wrong way in most cases. And I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. And I've ranted about ranting, for God's sake. There's just, everybody's has a bad day. Everybody has an attitude. But the worst thing you can do is get online when that's the case. But we're in an interesting time because, hell, when I first got started, this Facebook we didn't have groups. Everybody was on Trad Gang, right? Right. Yeah. And, with moderators and things like that. So we're in the dawn of a new era. It's so easy to reach out and connect to people now, more so than it's ever been. On the other hand, it's even more dangerous. You can scare, like you were saying, you can scare somebody out of the sport real fast by coming off that way.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything you've said. And when and just so that, I'm clear in being fair, it has been by no means, and I know you don't follow nearly the number of groups and so forth that I do just on Facebook.
No,
alone.
I pretty much rage quit them all.
Well, yeah, I've been guilty of that myself, but it's just for some comparisons, start a what's the best arrow shaft material in a traditional group, and it's very easy to see how quickly it can get out of hand. But it's not limited to that. If you're in some of the other groups, it's the mechanical broadhead versus fixed broadhead. If you're in a general hunting group or a gun hunting group, it's a 6.5 Creedmoor is the best round there ever has been, and if you're shooting anything other than that, you suck. It's definitely not limited within the traditional community. You see it all over, and it's part of it, like you said, is just the social media aspect. Hey, for lack of a better thing, it's people have a lot more they have a lot more moxie when they're online than they do in person. I've seen people say things online, and I know them personally, and I'm thinking, if you were standing in front of this guy, he wouldn't open his mouth. So
yeah, I know. And the other thing with that is that I think a lot of the hostility, we're human beings, and the particular, like you were saying, this is a great community. One of the things that makes this a great community is that there's a lot of passion in this community. People are you have to have a lot of passion to hunt this way, and suffer the hard seasons and the misses and everything. You got to be a passionate person, a certain kind of person. And when you're most of the people that you encounter, I always joke about eccentric archers. We're all eccentric, man. Like we're zealots. We are a little bit nuts. And that's what you get when you talk to people. When you talk to archers, you're going to get strong opinions. That's what you're going to get. They are proud to do what they're doing. They're passionate people. They have worked their whole lives or their whole their own traditional journey to find out what has worked for them, and they want everybody to know what has worked for them. And when they hear other people talking about it, I mean, they're just chomping at the bit for somebody to say, "Ooh, give me your opinions on Black Widow bows," or "Give me your opinions on carbon arrows,"
right.
or "What broadhead are you shooting?" I mean, they're chomping at the bit because they want to tell you what has worked for them for years. And if you come with a different attitude or a different option, you're going to say, "That doesn't work. That doesn't work." No, you got to go Zwicky's. You got to go Zwicky's. I've killed so many deer, and that's what you see every time. And it's like, if we just
Magnus or Magnus
Grizzly or Ace,
who knows? Yeah.
Single bevel versus double bevel, all that whole deal. Wood arrows. Why do people shoot wood arrows? Why do people shoot carbons? Why do people do this? Is the RD longbow better than a D style longbow?
Right.
Is a recurve better than a hybrid?
And the list could go on and on and on. But to me, and when I started, again, as we're talking about why the name Traditional Outdoors, there is another aspect of the traditional community that I absolutely adore. And that is for, the situations like you're talking about where if you ask somebody's opinion, you're going to get it. It's the willingness and the desire of so many people in this community to be a mentor, to step in, offer assistance, offer guidance, offer advice. Yeah, sometimes maybe when it's not wanted, but
when you don't want it.
But it's there, and again, being the older of the two of us, that's more the way things were when I was growing up. That's what communities did, is they would jump in and they would help each other out, and we've lost so much of that as a society. And that's one of the things in the traditional community that I do really like. One thing that I happen to think about as you was going through that, I do want to just kind of throw this out, is one thing that you and I we've talked about plenty of times online, is the quote big tent theory. And I want to make sure I'm making the distinction here that I'm still not a big tent person. I'm not and I want to quantify that. I'm not we need to get as many people in the woods hunting as we can at all costs. That should be our biggest goal. I still don't agree with that. I'll never agree with that. What I feel like is we need to focus on getting more of the right people in the field. And if and that isn't necessarily saying that there's a lot of people out there that are inherently bad. It's that a lot of people out there are going and heading to the woods that, for whatever reason, they don't share the same, in some cases, the same values, the same beliefs. I mean, look, you walk in on any piece of public land and it's fishing, it's hunting, it doesn't matter, and it's easy to see that some of the things that we used to have when I was growing up, we've lost. There's trash, there's coffee cups, there's soda bottles left up under, at the bottom of trees where people just tossed them out of their tree stand. Those are the kinds of things when I say I don't want more of those kind of people in the woods. It's not that I don't want that person in the woods hunting. I want to be able to instill better qualities in that person, passing along the traditions, being a mentor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've always broke it down into appreciative versus entitled. I feel like when you have a lot of traditionalists that I know are appreciative. They are appreciative of the land. They're appreciative of the animal, the ability to hunt. They're in it to hunt. They're appreciative of the values that were bestowed upon them, as you put it, the traditions, the romance of it, the heritage. Where a more entitled hunter is success driven. I bought my tags. I'm getting my deer. I'm getting them with, it's all tools to me. I'm getting them with whatever I need to get them with, and that's it. I'm going to take every edge, and I'm going to go over that edge if I need to, and I'm going to find the newest tech. I'm going to find the new. I'm going to get to the near the line of every rule there is without going over, and I'm going to get my deer, and that's what revs my engine. That the trophy at the end of the day, or the meat in the freezer, or whatever that may be. And there's a difference there. There is a big difference there. And that's why a lot of people don't really understand that it's not an organization that like PETA that we need to rally in a big tent and get behind and we need to go to war with them, and we're gonna defeat PETA, and we need to do that for hunting. That's not the kind of organization that's going to take us down. What's going to end up taking us down is hugging that line so much and pushing that line forward to the point where we're just seen as just killing machines that's harvesting everything. And, that's just going to lead to game laws changing and tougher restrictions and all that. And I've always believed that. That's why you and I have talked about this at length. I am not a big tent guy either. I've seen too many bad hunters. I've seen too many entitled hunters. I don't want entitled hunters, bad hunters in the woods. I don't want to find wrappers everywhere I go and tape on every tree and tree stands up well into June and I don't and bait piles where there shouldn't be bait piles. I don't need that stuff. That's not something that I value, and that ain't the kind of hunter I want in the woods with me. That's somebody that's going out there. They're doing whatever they damn well please. They think they own the woods, and they think they own every animal in it, and they have the right to take that life. And that's not what that means. That's not what hunting is to me. So I don't prescribe to that, and I never will. And we might take heat for it. I don't care. That's just where I'm at with it. And again, I don't think PETA is the biggest enemy here, and I don't think we need to have an army of hunters ready to take on PETA. That's not what's going to be the end of all this. And that's why I'm really excited that you wanted to start, this podcast, because I didn't want it to be like, we're talking about two kind of different things here. I know, wherein we're talking about being inclusive, but inclusive in a different way, right? The right kind of inclusive. It's hard to explain.
It is. It's actually very hard to explain. It's, and again, I just about some things off of what you said. I'm of the firm opinion that any tax-paying American has the right to be in the field. If you're a law-abiding citizen and you pay your taxes and you've paid your tags, you do the things you're supposed to do. Hey, it's in no way my responsibility or my right to stop you and tell you can't go in the woods. And that's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, I think we as fellow hunters, we as fellow fishermen, we as fellow campers and backpackers and hikers and anything in the outdoors, we need to be doing a better job of promoting good stewardship for our natural resources is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
And some of the things that you said, the entitled hunters, and I'm the same as you, Nick. And hey, look, everybody that goes out in the woods hunting, the ultimate goal is to take an animal. I mean, that's what hunting is. It's you are going out into the field to take an animal's life. There's nothing more serious to me than that. So that's one side of it. But if you look and you think about where and I call it the commercialization of hunting, but the hunting industry, if you look at the TV shows, the YouTube channels, the Facebook pages, the podcasts, there's a lot of them. And you know, again, we're starting a podcast. There's nothing wrong with any of those venues. They should be entertainment. They should be out there to help young hunters, young fishermen, young outdoorsmen, or new outdoorsmen to learn. Okay? But what they've, in my opinion, and you know what they say about opinions, but in my opinion, we've gotten to the point, and I've heard other people say this isn't me, but we've gotten to the point where it's all about the kill. It's, you know, I've got to get out there, I've got to find, like you said, find every possible advantage that I can get to go out in the woods and get something on the ground as quickly as possible. And for so many, it's so they can get that picture on Facebook, they can get that photo on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is. And they're missing so much of the experience. And to me, that's what it's about, is the experiences.
I totally agree. You read, I think that's why I have a hard time reading hunting stories a lot, because so many hunting stories, especially from the modern side of things, are A and B, and A to B, and that's it. It's A. You know, I got my bow, got tuned up, did whatever. Then B, I shot the animal. And, you know, they miss all the special sauce, everything in between. You know, what was it like that morning? You know, was it a crisp autumn, or was it a muddy day, or, you know, who were they hunting with? You know, what was breakfast that morning? You know, what were they thinking? What were they feeling? You know, that's the good stuff. Everybody's got a story that starts out in the morning and ends with the deer on the ground in the evening or in the afternoon. I mean, that's what you expect out of a hunting story, but it's everything in between that makes a hunt special. I mean, how many times have you and I gone out? I mean, I've never killed an animal with you. But we've had so many good hunts, so many memorable things, and the most memorable hunts that we've had were things where little things that happened that were funny or calamity or you know, just a terrible experience that ended up being really, you know, we learned a lot from it, or we just had a lot of fun talking about it. You know, it might not even seem good at the time, but it's good later. I mean, that's the stuff we still talk about. But so many are missing that. Like, how many videos have you seen that are like 45-minute video, kill shots only? It's like, really? Is that where we are? Like, that, I just don't get it. Like, I want to see everything else, and maybe I'm just weird, but I mean, that's, I mean, yeah, anybody can watch a video of an animal getting shot, I guess. I don't see what the draw to that is.
Well,
I don't know.
At this point, I would love to see someone in the hunting industry have the fortitude to do an entire series, and you know, I'm not talking about actually, you know, putting shows together that's just hours and hours of endless staring, you know, like the typical hunter does, but you know, go through an entire season and give people the reality of what hunting is, which is not. You know, 20 minutes of various clips showing how many days they've been in the woods, and then they shoot an animal. What you don't see there is all the days after days after days that they never aired a minute of footage because nothing happened. And you know, I've been doing this long enough. I know what sitting in the woods means. I mean, you're going to spend more time in the field with nothing happening than you are for those moments when you got activity going on. And you know, hunting, as far as the hunting industry, I mean, I remember the birth of hunting videos, and you know, even back then, you know, Noel Feather and Dan Fitzgerald and several others, and you know, Dan Fitzgerald's caught a lot of flack, and I honestly can say I think some of it's deserved. I can remember when he actually was trying to teach, and he, you know, his videos were entertaining, and I didn't feel like it was just about the just about the kill. Obviously, there were kills, and he was known as Mr. Pass-Through back then. He kind of developed a name for himself. But if you watch him now, it's a 30-minute to an hour-long commercial. Is really all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you mentioned so I said earlier, we pretty much met in 2012. Our first hunt was actually your first out-of-state hunt. We hunted in the fall of, actually the late summer of 2013, and I think we've been we've hunted together 4 times now, maybe.
Something like that.
But yeah, I mean, every one of them, we've got those little stories. The getting lost in the geckos of getting lost in the ghetto of Macon, Georgia, the 3-era armadillo. I mean, there's all kinds of stories that we have, but that you're right.
How it rains every time we hunt together.
It didn't. It did rain the first year, didn't it? I forgot.
It did,
because it sent us.
It rained. It always rains one whole day.
Yes, it does. unless you're hunting Cumberland Island and it rains the entire hunt.
And we sit in it because we paid for that one whole day.
That's right. And we've hunted together more than that because I've actually hunted in Michigan twice now. So, and you've hunted in Georgia 3 times and South Carolina once. So, we've hunted.
Yeah, what are we? 5 or 6 now?
Yeah, I think it's probably 6 and 7 coming up this year.
But I mean, when you break that down into all the hours and the woods and and stuff like that and all, I mean, it feels like a lot more than that. I mean, I feel like I've hunted with you my entire life. It's since I've only been at this 10 years, it's great. Half of it's been with you. So I guess, but, no, I get you. And, I think we'll save the product placement thing for another conversation, but that's another big turnoff of mine is I get it. Today it's a necessary evil to promote products and to get sponsorship and to make a living out of something you love. And I understand that. Podcasting and blogging and making videos and producing content takes a lot of time and effort. And a lot of these guys that do it, they're not making that much from it. It's a labor of love and they got to get something from it. I get that. My big thing with a lot of the modern publications and things of that nature in the shows is that that seems to be coming first. And I don't like that. They're not sponsoring your experience. They're enabling you to it's a deal. I mean, they're giving you a deal. They want you to promote their product, and that's great. And there's time to do that. It doesn't need to interrupt your experience. It shouldn't take from your experience at all. Your experience is all on you. It's got nothing to do with the product. And I wish more people thought that way. I don't think that's where we're going. I think right now it's, we're in a hashtag society and everything's got to have something to do with something. And it's not just about searching anymore. It's about, oh, well, this means I've made it, that kind of thing. Or I got to put this in every single post. I have to do it because, these people were nice enough to sponsor me. Well, yeah, yes and no. I get it. I understand. It's just one of those, it's like reading an article and all of a sudden somebody inserts that they were shooting this bow with this broadhead and they're trying to do it naturally. And it's like, no, you can't do it naturally. Just leave that in the end, right. Or something like that, or talk about it at the beginning. There's ways to do it, but, yeah, I mean, it's we just live in a different time now. It's weird being a traditionalist in the outdoors in this day and age. In the phone era, it's just in the connected era. It's interesting. And I had a conversation with somebody who had a podcast about this a few months ago, and it was like I had written a rant about this, about how I wish people would stop hashtagging everything and doing all this, and they took offense to it, and I didn't mean it quite like that. My whole point was I didn't like where it was going. I understood it. I just don't like the idea of being a traditionalist and trying to modernize it. Like, that's not what I want to do. That's not what I ever wanted to do. You got to do it to some extent, but it just feels wrong, and in my heart. So I'm kind of coming to grips to that, and here we are making a podcast about traditional outdoors.
Well, and that's another aspect that I think is going to really make this entertaining and good, Nick, is that, I guess I have lived both worlds, and I think as we move forward, this podcast is not going to be solely about traditional archery. In fact, I really just want that to be one facet of the bigger picture. And when we have guests that are outside of that traditional community, I think that's where you're going to really add a lot of value, because you're going to be able to ask questions that I probably won't think of, because it's a bit more, I won't say second nature, but I'm a bit more accustomed to it. I've lived that life, and I think that's where it's really going to be interesting to see the things that you think of to ask that I never would.
Well, hey, I'm good at being a noob. I don't have a problem being a noob. So there you go. And there are a lot of things I want to know about. Whether it's waterfowling or upland bird hunting or fly fishing or anything. There's a lot of things I want to do. A little bit limited on time because of the kids, but I mean, there's a lot that, even backpacking, stuff like that. Like, I know at some point I want to go after elk out west, or mule deer. And, I don't know the first thing about backpacking other than what I've read. There's a lot I want to learn. So I'm hoping that, I'm glad that we're going outside of this. Cause you can only talk about this so much. There's some great content out there. There's other podcasts that are really good. Trad Geeks, The Push, Trad Quest. This community is only so big, and there's only so much to talk about, right? So we can't all interview the same people.
That's right.
So we need.
And I listen to a lot of podcasts too. You just kind of rattled off a few, and I love listening to the Gritty Bowman. I love listening to Steve Ranella. I love listening to South Cox and his podcast. So there really are a lot of good podcasts out there. And I'm not trying to redo anything that they're already doing. But again, because you're coming into this podcast with kind of a different point of view and a different perspective, the things that are going to be, I would say, entertaining, the discussions that would be interesting. Let's use that. The topics that would be interesting to me, I think you're going to find them more entertaining, and you're actually going to be a member of the podcast from the perspective of the target audience in some cases that I'm hoping we're attracting. I'm hoping it's both seasoned as well as people that are good just getting into the outdoors. And one more thing, I know we're coming up on an hour, and I do want to try to keep this to an hour. The only other thing that I would interject as one of our goals that I really want us to focus on, and then I want to talk about the website just a little bit, is the aspect that there's another threat that we're facing as outdoorsmen, and that's we're seeing a threat to our public lands, and I know you've already said that you focus a lot on hunting public lands. And in fact, I think pretty much most of the private land hunting you've done has probably been with me, but I hunt a lot of public land myself, and I fish a lot of public streams. I spend a lot of time in the outdoors on national forest or wildlife management areas, and I'm actually I've got a few more months of payments, and I will be a life member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, a great organization that I think is doing a lot of things to help protect our public lands. If you're not a member, I would highly recommend anybody going over to their website. And again, you can just search Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and join up. They do a lot of real good things. So from a podcast perspective, from a website perspective, I hope we've kind of danced around what our focus is going to be, but really it's about promoting the outdoors, all aspects, with a somewhat mentality of from a traditionalist perspective. And when I say traditionalist, I'm not saying traditional archer. I'm not saying traditional bow hunter. I'm saying getting back to our roots, getting back to the things that we should be going to the outdoors for, and that's the experiences. That's for the enjoyment. Mentoring others, getting kids involved. That's a big deal, whether it's hunting, fishing, camping, backpacking. If we don't get our youths more involved in the outdoors, we're fighting a losing battle. And, a lot of the material that we're going to cover going forward, I'm hoping we have a solid focus on getting kids involved in the outdoors. And I did want to just briefly touch on the website. There is a website that coincides with the podcast. It's www.traditionaloutdoors.com. And the website, there's going to be some original content on the website. Nick, obviously, you write a good bit. We've mentioned Tom Jurgensen, another good friend of ours. Tom writes some. I write for a few publications as well as my own website. So there will be some traditional content. But one thing that I'm doing is I'm actually spending a lot of time scouring the web, looking for what I would call best-in-class articles on other blogs, other websites. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of that content on the website, just a basic brief intro, let you know what the article's about, photo, maybe two, with a backlink to the original site so that, you can follow that. If the story interests you, you can follow it to the original source and you can read that information. So it's kind of a hub for information. And then there'll also be news and information around legislation, public lands, threat to public lands, public waters, those kind of things. So there's going to be a lot of information on the website. We've already got a lot of information posted. Nick's helping me out. Tom's helping me out. Got a lot of folks that are actually looking for and letting me know when they find good content, so we can share that and get it out there for the masses.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Or it is exciting. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to learning. And I think a lot of people will enjoy what we put out.
Well, I sure hope so. And, I've already been, and obviously you know this, Nick, but I've already been reaching out to some people. So we are going to have some guest spots. There will be a lot of these podcasts that will be on various topics that, will just be me and you, Nick. I know some of them that we're kind of bouncing around is possible interview or actually interviews with Jay St. Charles. If you're not familiar with Jay St. Charles, his father, Glenn, is actually the founder of Pope and Young. So whether you're a traditional archer or a traditional bow hunter or a modern bow hunter, I'm sure you're familiar with Pope and Young. Got a few other peoples in the traditional and primitive community that we've already got lined up. Ryan Gill, he actually has his own website, YouTube channel. He's really big into primitive, does some really cool stuff with primitive bows, and one of the best flint nappers that I've ever come into contact with. And
he wrote a good book too.
Yes, he has. He's actually got a couple of books, and I think I know he's got two because I own both of them.
Yeah, and also I'm at some point too. Steve and I aren't just going for celebrity either. I mean, we're going for. I know we're both members of the Michigan Longbow Association. Steve's a Georgia member of the association, which is. It says a lot about the MLA that he would actually come all the way across the country to the north side and attend a banquet, and he recently did. I mean, there's a lot of great people in the Michigan Longbow Association. And I'm a former president, and we know a lot of members and have a lot of mutual friends. Tom's a member, and there's a lot of great people in that organization that I'd love to have on the show too. Plus, backcountry hunters and anglers. Sure, there's some people there that'd like to be on here also.
Absolutely. And it's funny as far as the Michigan Longbow Association. I'm pretty sure now. The number of people I know and have become friends with from a bow hunting perspective in Michigan is probably as high or maybe even a little bit higher than the number of people I know in my home state of Georgia. So Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Great organization. So yeah, so we're definitely bouncing around some ideas. I know that in a couple of weeks I will be hunting with Tom at Wild Things up in South Carolina. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Tom and I are already talking about. We're actually going to. I'm going to pack up the recording gear and carry that with me, and we're actually going to try to record at least one, maybe even two podcasts while we're in the low country of South Carolina chasing wild hogs. So that should be entertaining. And like I said, Nick, you and I have already got some ideas laid out. So the next several weeks should be very entertaining.
I agree.
Any closing remarks you have, Nick?
No, I think that's it. I think you heard enough from me. I'd call this a good episode. Everybody knows kind of what we're about, who we are, and we've got stuff coming, folks. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, Nick, I sure appreciate you being my co-host. And for everyone listening, be sure to head out and check out the website, traditionaloutdoors.com. We can also be found on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All of those links are already on the website. We would appreciate a follow and any comments that you may have to support the podcast, support the website. So please be sure to subscribe and drop us a line. Thanks so much, everyone.